Hello, my name is Maarten Gigaze, and today I would like to rouse you with an item that has drawn my attention. The US Food and Drug Administration prohibits men who have had sex with other men at any time since the 1980s from ever donating blood, saying that as a group they are at a higher risk of HIV and other infections that can be transmitted through transfusions. This lifetime ban was introduced as a response to the AIDS epidemic and the lack of adequate HIV tests. But is it justified to put a lifetime ban on blood donations by homosexual men? Even though I understand that the FDA came up with this law, it seems very discriminating and out of date to me. This ban has been questioned both on equality and medical grounds. I found an argument in USA Today describing this ban as discriminating, or, as the director of the Fairness campaign in Louisville said, it's a continued vestige of the fear and the prejudice that the gay community faces. The FDA doesn't restrict even the most promiscuous heterosexuals from giving blood. An article in the Los Angeles Times stated the FDA implemented the ban in 1983 after 10,000 people with the bleeding disorder hemophilia became infected with HIV through transfusion of HIV-tainted blood. I think you understand, this was a complete disaster. Being in the hospital for a blood transfusion and leaving infected with HIV is the worst scenario you can think of. All blood donations are screened for HIV and other infections. However, there is a certain window period after infection during which it is impossible to detect the virus. The safety of the blood supply is absolutely essential, and any restrictions must be based on the latest scientific evidence. There have been advances in the testing of donated blood, which have significantly reduced the chance of errors and have reduced the size of the window period, but this is still 10 days since exposure. That means that someone who just became infected with HIV can come in to donate blood and test negative. I can understand now why the FDA came up with this law, and why it has not been lifted yet. Even today's sensitive tests fail to detect about 1 in a million HIV infections, and with more than 20 million blood transfusions per year, they just do not want to take the risk. In this very broad publication there was another view at the law. In a few countries there has been made a 1-year deferral, which allows men to become blood donors as long as they have not had sex with another man in the previous year. They state the focus should be on potential donors' risky sexual behavior, rather than their sexual orientation. And the advances in science and technology make a lifetime ban on blood donations from men who have sex with men unnecessary. But why take the risk? Because the article also says then the number of donations would still be very minimal. Very few people are going to abstain from sex for a year just to be able to donate blood. That seemed logical to me. Before I started this research, this law seemed very discriminating to me. I was glad to read in an NOS article that the Dutch government recently discussed this law in the second chamber and was investigating relaxing the rules. But I have changed my mind. I can understand why the FDA set up this law. Even though advanced technologies have greatly reduced the risk of HIV transmission, they cannot yet detect all infected donors, and every tainted blood donation is one too much. Imagine turning out to be HIV positive after a blood transfusion. That would be killing. Although I know blood donors are needed desperately, I think you have to be able to give as much guarantee as possible concerning the safety. That is why this policy of restriction should not be interpreted as discrimination and not be based on sexual orientation, but on risky sexual behavior or risky behavior in the broadest way. The protection of the blood recipients is the primary responsibility. Taking all this in concern, I think a lifetime ban on blood donation by homosexual men can still be justified. Thank you for listening.